Hello, my unraveled friends. I'm so happy to see you as always. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Tiff, and this is Tiff Unraveled. If you're not new here and you're coming back to hang out with me again, then of course, welcome back. I love to see you. I love you guys so much. I know it's spooky season. I have been wanting to tell some spooky tales. Today we are going to talk about a ghost, but not the kind of ghost that rattles chains or haunts old houses, but a digital ghost, the kind that is left behind when a child's vibrant online life suddenly goes dark. This digital ghost can tell a story. It can, and this one, infuriatingly, tells a story of grooming, of fear, and of a secret that ultimately became a death sentence. This is the story of 13-year-old Ziyah Harris. On January 9th, 2024, Ziyah Harris stepped off of her school bus on the east side of Detroit, and from there into oblivion. She was not a runaway. She had perfect school attendance, no unexcused absences, extremely active on social media, always connected, and then silence. This is another what's known as no body homicide case. This is essentially a prosecutor's worst nightmare, right? You have to prove a murder without the very most crucial piece of evidence, the victim themselves. But the investigators in Wayne County, Michigan, discovered something incredibly powerful. They found Ziyah's voice in the digital ether, in hundreds of text messages, in a school-issued tablet, in a final chilling communication that set up a meeting from which Ziyah Harris would never return. Over the next however many minutes, if you'll hang out with me, we're going to walk through the last days of Ziyah's life. We're going to dissect a mountain of evidence, which for prosecutors turned out to be over 500 gigabytes of phone data. And the prosecutors say that this data proves her murder beyond any doubt. We will sit in on the explosive preliminary hearing where more than 24 witnesses took the stand and exposed a universe of secrets and lies. But most importantly, as we tend to do here on TIFF Unraveled, we will confront a very uncomfortable truth that lies at the heart of this and so many other cases like this one. This is not just the story of a predator. It is the story of a predator, an infuriating predator, but it's also the story of a system, not just communal, educational, but familial, even in this case, allegedly, in my opinion, that utterly and completely failed once again to protect a child. This is the story of willful fucking blindness, again, in my opinion, and devastating silence. So, as I need to do already, and we haven't even started, take a deep breath, because we need to talk about what happened to Ziyah Harris. Let's unravel. So make sure you stay tuned, because later this evening I do have a spooky story to tell. I can't wait to tell it. It's a little weird. Well, that's the point. It's weird and spooky, but I had to talk about this. This case has been on my list for a really, really long time since it broke. But just every time I turn around, it's like something else is happening with our perpetrator here. But today I finally just felt compelled to tell Naziah's story, and so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna tell Naziah's story. Before Naziah was a headline in the news or in the papers or online or on social media, Naziah, she was a beautiful 13-year-old girl. Beautiful 13-year-old girl. In the last photo that she ever took, she looked so adorable. She had these like clear framed glasses, and her hair was in these two like braided little puff balls. This photo she took of herself on her school issued tablet. She's looking at the camera, right? Through these adorable little lenses. She just so young, so beautiful, and she just looked like any other kid, any other, teenage girl that's kind of navigating middle school, right? Trying to take selfies when she should be, in class. That's stuff my daughters do, just that adorable teenage girl stuff. So Naziah lived with her grandmother. Her name is Annette Harris. And Annette was actually also her legal adoptive mother. Her life did have a rhythm. It had a routine. January 9th, 2024, it began with that routine. Her grandmother, Annette, testified at the preliminary hearing that she dropped Naziah off at school that morning. But inside the school, Naziah's day was anything but routine. Something was terribly wrong. Testimony from the preliminary hearing painted a very disturbing picture of Naziah, quote, on the floor on the day she went missing, saying she needed to speak with someone and speak to the counselor, unquote. But the counselor, or whoever was supposed to be there, never showed up for her. And so I want you to pause for a second and visualize this. A 13-year-old girl, so overwhelmed by her reality, whatever that reality was at that moment, and we will get into it, that she is physically on the floor in her school begging for help, and the door she knocked on was closed. Essentially, what could have been so catastrophic? We will get there. We will get there. Despite her distress, she got through the day, apparently. There's video of her getting on the school bus wearing a white sweater, a black jacket, and a Rugrats, like a colorful Rugrats puffy jacket, light blue jeans, and Nike shoes. And there is also video of her getting off of the bus at her stop, which was at Cornwall and 3 Mile Drive. And that is the last time that any camera or any credible witnesses saw Naziah again. When she didn't come home, her grandmother said that she became concerned around 6 p.m. She looked around the neighborhood, but she didn't call 911. She waited. And she went to sleep. Actually, she went to sleep. Yeah. She waited until the next morning. I feel myself getting angry. She waited until approximately 15 hours after Naziah was supposed to be home to report her missing for the police. And this was not in, this is all according to the preliminary hearing, which we're going to sit in on, actually. This wasn't 15 hours of like her calling and searching and all that. No. No. She just, went to bed. She went to bed that night, and then she woke up and the next morning when Naziah wasn't home, that's when she realized she might be missing. And so she called the police at that time. 15 hours. I have to ask you, right? If a child, right, if your child who maybe has like really good attendance at school, they've never run away, if they didn't come home from school that day, would you wait 15 minutes, let alone 15 hours to call for help? Probably not. I'm assuming not. I'm guessing not. Not. The initial investigation was handled by the Detroit Public Schools Police Department. There was an officer named Derek Wolf who testified at the preliminary hearing that he canvassed the school the next day. He talked to classmates, and he was the one who reviewed that final bus stop footage. But the case was very quickly handed over to the Detroit Police Department, where it landed on the desk of Sergeant Shannon Jones, and she immediately saw the red flags. Number one, Ziyah had never gone missing before. She'd never run away before. She has no history of being missing. Okay. And number two, Ziyah, who was super active on her social media, had just completely gone silent. And Sergeant Jones testified in that preliminary hearing that, quote, "It is very uncommon for a young child or juvenile," unquote. And I think specifically Ziyah, like looking back on her social media history, they were able to see that there was a pattern of activity and then very suddenly no activity. So while the police began their work, Ziyah's biological father, Mervyn Jennings, began his own very desperate search for his daughter. He was out there every single day. He was combing the Rouge River area, and he was pleading publicly on social media, all of the above, for answers. And the stress and the grief was absolutely unimaginable. And in a very heartbreaking turn of events, before any arrests were even made, Ziyah Harris's biological father, Mervyn Jennings, died of congestive heart failure in the summer of 2024. And those that were close to him and knew him said that he literally died of a broken heart, and he never got to see justice for his daughter.
Months since 13-year-old Ziyah Harris stepped off her school bus and disappeared.
Now her family is still waiting for answers and renewing their pleas for someone to come forward with information.
Ziyah was last seen back on January 9th at the intersection of Cornwall and 3 Mile Drive.
Now, the primary suspect in her disappearance is a registered sex offender currently being held in the Wayne County Jail.
Well, 7 News Detroit reporter Ryan Marshall is live at the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice in downtown Detroit, where the family will gather for a vigil later this morning. Ryan.
Well, guys, the family of that missing Detroit teen still seeking justice in this case. That includes Ziyah's biological father, who exclusively spoke with 7 News Detroit. He is fighting for his own life, but is holding on to find his little girl.
I know the family hopes and prays that she is still alive.
Correct.
But if you get that phone call,
That's why I'm getting back in the ministry.
48-year-old Mervyn Jennings is Ziyah Harris's biological father. He says he's tried to reconnect with his daughter for the past 8 years. Jennings says he was only reconnected after 2 Detroit Public Schools police officers tracked him down.
When the last time you been up to your daughter's school? I said, my daughter's school. I said, I don't even know what school she go to. I said, I've been looking for her. And they looked at each other, and I was like, what's going on? They said, your daughter's missing.
He's dealt with serious medical issues in the 8 years away from Ziyah. Jennings has congestive heart failure. He says in April, doctors gave him only 7 days to live. While that prognosis has slightly improved, Mervyn needs a new heart. While dealing with those difficult health challenges, Mervyn says what really hurts his heart.
I believe my daughter was pregnant. Yes.
He says much of the family thinks Ziyah was being sexually assaulted by a man who is a convicted sex offender. We're not naming him because he hasn't been officially charged in the case.
Oh my God. They were like, oh my God. Oh my God. You know, what's done in the dark, it's gonna come. You can't do this. You can't do this, man.
And get this, Mervyn also says that he talked to Ziyah's older brother, who says that registered sex offender has been molesting her since she was 12 years old. They are holding out hope that Ziyah will come home alive.
So now I guess the time has come. The time has come to talk about the absolute piece of human garbage that is at the center of this case. And that person's name is Jarvis Butts. He was 41 years old when the abuse that took place in this case allegedly began. He was 42 when Ziyah disappeared. Jarvis, at this case, reminds me so much of Maddie Soto, because Jarvis was not just some stranger lurking in the shadows, okay? He was family or close enough. He was the long-term, on-again, off-again boyfriend of Naziyah's biological aunt, Shannon Harris. He was the father to Naziyah's 5 cousins, and he had known Naziyah since she was just 2 years old. In her world, he was her uncle. He was family. This is how these predators work. This is how they work. They don't always wear a mask, and sometimes they even wear trusted faces of family. Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy did not mince words. She called Butts a, quote, classic and expert groomer and PDF, unquote. And she said that he had a history of, quote, a history of, quote, targeting and befriending women to get close to and sexually abuse their daughters, unquote. She labeled him a, quote, serial child rapist. Serial, and the label fits. While awaiting for trial for Naziyah's murder, Jarvis Butts was charged in a completely separate case with the sexual assault of an 8-year-old female relative. Those assaults allegedly took place between 2021 and 2022 at his owned auto repair shop on Detroit's east side. During court proceedings, it was also mentioned that he allegedly sexually assaulted his girlfriend's, one of his girlfriend's 4-year-old daughters, who tragically, at 4 years old, contracted an STI, an sexually transmitted infection that starts with a cl, as a result of his abuse of her. Four. He even has a prior conviction of sexual assault from 2005. This is not a man who just like made a mistake. Not that making some, not a, but like that can't even be used, right? Oh, I made a mistake. No, this, not that, again, it's never, this kind of thing is never a mistake. But I'm just saying, in a court of law with these stupid fucking things that these perpetrators try to come up with, like that can't even be said by him here, right? Because this is a man with a documented, horrifying pattern of behavior, and it is getting angry. And here's a chilling coincidence, right? On January 9th, the very day that Naziyah Harris vanished, Jarvis Butts was actually scheduled to turn himself into authorities on an unrelated gun charge. And for some reason, that surrender date was postponed. Who knows why, right? But had it not been postponed, maybe, if the man had been put in jail on the day he was supposed to be put in jail, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I don't know. When police first brought Jarvis Butts in for questioning, he played dumb. Right? He told Sergeant Jones that he had nothing to hide. Everything's in my phone, right? He claimed that he hadn't even seen Naziyah since late December or early January when she was at her grandma's house getting her hair done. He denied any physical relationship whatsoever, and it was a total stonewall, right, during this first interview. But he did make one critical mistake. He told police that he knew where her bus stop was, and it was a small admission, but it was the first thread in a lie that was about to be completely unraveled. I mean, let's be real. If this case teaches anybody anything, it should teach everybody a million things. But if it teaches anybody anything, it should teach us that we live in the 21st century and secrets are very fucking hard to keep. Very hard to keep. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office cited through a staggering amount of data. Okay, apparently they had over 100 gigabytes of video, 19 gigabytes of documents, and 500 gigabytes of phone extractions. And in that data, in all of that data, they found Naziyah's story. During the preliminary hearing, Sergeant Shannon Jones, she took the stand. At that time, she read into the court record all of the text messages that were exchanged between a 41-year-old man and a child who was just 11 and 12 years old when all of this grooming and disgusting behavior began. Let me tell you some sad shit. Naziyah, poor baby. Naziyah had saved Jarvis's number in her phone as, quote, "Bae for life," unquote. This young girl thought, as a result of his years of extensive grooming, this young girl thought, based on how he was saved in her phone as a contact, "Bae for life," she thought that she was in a relationship with this man. That's what she thought. God, my throat is getting tight. I'm gonna read through some of these text messages just as they were read in the preliminary hearing in court. Trigger warning. All of these messages are incredibly disturbing. And again, this is just a snippet. So again, trigger warning. Okay, as we unravel these threads, we are going to touch on some incredibly difficult topics and issues. And if you need to step away or if you need to skip forward, please do. Always, always prioritize your mental health. Your seat is not being taken. It's always here. Okay? Again, you need to hear it though. For those of you who can, you need to. The texts start with June 5th, 2022. Butts texts. "I'm at your house." Ziyah replies, "I miss you." He then says, I stole your panties." September, again, these are just snippets. We're skipping forward, okay, to just some significant contextual text messages. September 27th, 2022, Naziyah texts, "Where are we doing it at? Your choice." She suggests after that, quote, "basement or job." Jarvis Butts replies with a graphic SUL request, and then the classic groomer command, "and make sure you erase these messages." Ziyah's reply is sad, devastating. He says, quote, "K, that is what I plan to do," unquote. Now we go to June 27th, 2023. Jarvis Butts texts 13-year-old Naziyah Harris and says, I can't even read these. He says to her, "Are you naked yet?" Naziyah texts Jarvis back and she says, "No, I don't want to get naked." "Are you mad that I didn't get naked?" He manipulates her and he says, "I'm used to you telling me no." And she apologizes and says, "Come on, bae. I'm sorry. I'm just not in the mood right now. I'm sorry." Oh, my literal, when my anxiety goes up, I literally get like the muscles in my neck and my throat almost they hurt. They feel strained. And that's what I'm feeling right now. These kinds of text messages, I can't. They go on for forever, for way too long, far too long. Any amount of time is too long. But they continue. But in the fall of 2023, this dynamic kind of shifts. And the secret that they were keeping was no longer just about the abuse that Jarvis was inflicting upon this girl. It was about to become a biological fact. September 26th, 2023, Ziyah texts him, quote, "My period haven't came at all. I'm scared. I don't know what to do." Butts plays it cool, right? He reminds her that a pregnancy test that she previously took was negative, right? And in these texts, you can see her pleading with him to get another test for her because she doesn't have any money. November 27th, 2023, the secret is out, at least between the two of them, and Ziyah texts him, and she's very clearly frustrated. And she says, quote, "I don't what your problem, but I need you to bring me what I need tonight. It's hard doing all this gym shit with this baby, and if I don't do them, I'm gonna get an F." The girl is in school and she's taking all of the classes that, my teenage daughters take, PE being one of them, and she's saying, like, I can't do all these things, and I don't know what she's asking him for, but she's saying, "I need it from you and I can't fail. If I don't get what I need from you, I'm going to fail this class because I can't participate in gym right now. I can't do it because of allegedly a pregnancy." 13-year-old girl. 13-year-old girl pregnant by the man who is also kind of like her uncle, who she calls in her own phone Bae for life, right? And for Jarvis Butts, this was a ticking fucking time bomb. A ticking time bomb. Prosecutors argued that, because remember how I said that he was supposed to surrender himself on the very day that Ziyah Harris went missing? Well, prosecutors are arguing that on that day he made reference to a, quote, legal issue, unquote, on the day that he was supposed to turn himself in on that gun charge. And it wasn't a legal issue. Prosecutors are arguing that it was about the fact that he had learned that he had impregnated a teenage girl. That was the reason that he got this continuance on his surrender, because what was he going to do? Well, what did he do? Let's answer that question. He turned to his phone for answers. And here, yes, we so often see these brilliant idiots turn to Google, for answers. And he did the same. He's no exception. Between December 8th and December 11th of 2023, his search history became what I would consider a blueprint for a cover-up. He searched for abortion pills and over-the-counter abortion medications. He visited Planned Parenthood's website multiple times, specifically looking at links for the abortion pill. He looked at a website for herbal abortion teas with the ghoulish title, quote, "Drink me and abort your baby," unquote. But then the searches turned from desperate to deadly. He searched for information on, quote, "drinking red antifreeze," unquote. This is the search that led the judge to believe that he was planning a do-it-yourself abortion that he knew could kill her. Which brings us to the final text exchange, at least that we know of, between Ziyah and her alleged murderer, Jarvis Butts. January 9th, 2024, the day she disappeared, it's very chillingly simple. Ziyah texts, quote, "Don't forget, be there before 3. I will let you know when I'm leaving this school. If you're not there, I will wait," unquote. And then the instruction from a child who has been taught to keep secrets, she sends him, quote, "Send okay if you see this message so I can delete your number," unquote. And his last words to Ziyah Harris was a reply to that text that said, "Okay." So Jarvis Butts had told police that he hadn't seen Ziyah, but his phone and a parade of witnesses, well, they called him a liar. The preliminary hearing was a masterclass in connecting digital dots to physical locations. An expert in cell phone forensics took the stand and laid out a timeline that was impossible to refute. Let's go through this timeline, right? The digital timeline, what Jarvis Butts' phone showed investigators. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that after 4 p.m. on January 9th, right? This is the day that Ziyah Harris went missing. Butts' phone, Jarvis Butts' phone, is at his auto shop on Connors Street. This is exactly where his own sister, who took the stand in the hearing, her name is Tawana Butts, testified that she saw a young girl matching Ziyah's description, and she said that she had never seen this girl at the shop before. She had never seen any girls at the shop before other than her own nieces. She asked her brother, according to her testimony, who the girl was, and he lied and said that he was her business partner's niece. Tawana didn't connect the dots until some months later when she heard a podcast about this case. So from afternoon to evening on this same day, January 9th, the phone travels to Ypsilanti, is how I think you say that. I'm not sure. Ypsilanti, and then back to the shop. So this matches the testimony of Talisha Moore, who saw Ziyah in Ypsilanti with Jarvis Butts and his business partner. They were dropping off her mother's vehicle, and like Tawana, she didn't know who Ziyah was until detectives came knocking on her door much later, apparently, according to her testimony. That evening, so we're talking 9:30 p.m. until sometime after midnight the next day, Jarvis Butts actually checks into a hotel, and his phone pings near the Parkrest Inn, which is a place that witnesses would testify that Jarvis Butts was known for taking women for extracurriculars. So then we are getting into late night, January 10th, right? So the next day, late night the next day, and then early morning the day after that, January 11th. This is key, okay? Between 11:40 p.m. and 1:30 a.m., Jarvis's phone is active in a remote area of the Rouge River near 7 Mile and Berg roads, an area that, according to witnesses and testimony, Jarvis Butts knew very well. That cell data was a treasure map. It led a multi-agency task force right to that riverbank, and there the U.S. Border Patrol, a specific agent, his name is Agent Wyatt Barnes, he found the physical proof that corroborated this entire digital trail that they had followed up until now. He testified to finding an inside-out pink jumpsuit, a black jacket, and a single red and black shoe. Agent Barnes noted that the clothing looked fresh, not like it had been exposed to the elements for like a really long time. And then there was also damage to the clothing that, in his opinion, would indicate a struggle. And on that clothing, right, on the sweatshirt or the jumpsuit, sources vary, Prosecutors say that they found human blood, and forensic analysis allegedly revealed that evidence matched the DNA of both Naziah Harris and Jarvis Butts. So the trail of discarded items just continued. On March the 7th, right, sometime later, a woman found Naziah Harris's school ID on a sidewalk near 7 Mile and Evergreen, and she testified that she had stepped over it for 2.5 weeks prior to picking it up. And then when she finally was like, what is this thing I keep stepping, like I keep seeing this thing on the sidewalk, like what is this? And she picked it up and she realized that it was the student ID of Naziah Harris. And she recognized that name at that point because of all of the publicity in that area. And so she kept it and called police and preserved that ID for them. And then there's the story of these glasses, right? Latrice Johnson, she is the mother of one of Jarvis Butts's many children. She testified that Jarvis borrowed her car on January 9th, and the next day, her son found a pair of clear framed glasses in the back seat of that car. When she took them from her son, she said that Jarvis snatched them out of her hand, claiming that they belonged to his other son. I don't know how many kids this guy has, but many. Naziah's last photo, though, actually, like I showed in the beginning, we'll put it there, shows her wearing clear framed glasses. After Butts turned himself in, he actually called Latrice Johnson from jail and warned her that police were searching for anything that he had touched, trying to put together this timeline, right? This physical trail of clothing, her ID, her glasses, this entire web of lies all came to a head in a Detroit courtroom. So now we arrive to the 4-day-long marathon of testimony that was the preliminary hearing. The prosecution called over 24 witnesses to build their body of evidence. The defense called 0. None. Their argument was simple. No body, no murder, right? They claimed that all of this evidence was purely circumstantial, and that the cell phone data only proved where Butts was, but not what he was doing, right? And they attacked the DNA evidence, saying that the blood stain was too small to be retested. I mean, of course, it's a classic defense attempt to muddy the waters. But the witnesses, one by one, cleared those waters with horrifying clarity, in my opinion. The most powerful testimony, however, came from, again, in my opinion, came from Naziah's young cousin. This child, whose name we will not use, took the stand and testified that she was in the room when Butts, quote, took advantage of and had sex with Naziah, unquote. She said it was not the first time that she had witnessed Butts, quote, coercing on her cousins, plural cousins. She even testified that Butts tried to make advances towards her, but she was able to say no after recognizing what he was trying to do. God, I want you to think about the sheer bravery of that child to sit in this courtroom and finally be able to speak, which I'm sure she was terrified to do, which I'm sure is why she didn't do prior. Terrified to speak the truth about the man who was her own cousin's father. Brave girl. Brave girl. And then the adults took the stand. Naziah's aunt, Shannon Harris, who was also Jarvis Butts' girlfriend, the mother of his some of his 5 children, like 5 of some of his children, like 5 of, she was the mother of 5 of his children, but those weren't his only children, is what I'm trying to say, basically. Okay. She testified that she never suspected anything more than a, quote, normal uncle-niece bond, unquote. A normal bond? She admitted that only after Nazia went missing did she find inappropriate Instagram messages between them. How convenient. She found the messages, but only after Nazia went missing did she find them. Okay, Shannon. And then came we're gonna watch this, by the way. It's not gonna be in this episode. As soon as I end this, I'm going to screen record and upload like the entire preliminary trial of Jarvis Butts. And if you're into that kind of thing, I want you to join me for that, because I mean, I'll interrupt it every, 2 minutes with my ridiculous commentary. But I mean, if you're here for that, you're here for that. So let's do it together. But again, okay. So then came Nazia's grandmother. As I said, her name is Annette Harris, and the judge would later call her testimony questionable. The judge would call Annette Harris's testimony questionable. She testified about Nazia's routine. She established to the court that Nazia was not a runaway, but the judge was, I think, pretty stunned by her demeanor, noting that she testified about her granddaughter's disappearance, quote, without a tear, without emotion, or any expression of being devastated. The judge also found it very hard to believe her claim that Butts rarely came to the home, especially when so many people saw Nazia and other young girls frequent his auto shop. And this brings us to the judge's final ruling in the preliminary hearing, which was less of a legal decision and more of a righteous sermon. Judge Aaliyah Sapri had heard enough. Can you imagine? I mean, honestly, can you imagine sitting in a courtroom, hearing these text messages, right, read by investigators, and then hearing these adult witnesses come on the stand and talk about, she ruled in the end, because like I said, we're going to go through the preliminary hearing, but at the end of it, in case you don't want to watch that, I'll tell you now. She ruled that there was overwhelming evidence to send Jarvis Butts to trial for first-degree premeditated murder. She laid out the prosecution's theory as facts. Butts intended to perform a do-it-yourself abortion on Nazia, but when it went south, instead of getting help, he intentionally killed her and tried his best to cover it up. But she was not done. She was not done. He ordered Jarvis Butts to stand up. Stand up, sir. Stand the fuck up and look me in my eye. And then she spoke directly to him. And she said, quote, "Whew! At one point, I thought you were cognitively impaired," she said. "But as I heard more and more testimonies, you are just the true definition of a PDF. You ruined Nazia. You played mind games with her. You controlled her emotionally. Nazia deserved so much more. And while I mentioned that other people have failed her, Jarvis Butts, you are the monster in this whole picture, Queen." She continued, quote, "She did deserve love from her parents and everyone who was in her life. She was ignored. She was neglected, and you took complete advantage of that. She wanted someone to love her, and now she will never know what that feels like." Then Judge turned her attention to what she called, quote, "the community that failed her," unquote. And she did not hold back. I love a fucking queen. I love a queen. On the family, she said, quote, "How were there 2 women in that house who had birthed children themselves who did not notice Nazia was pregnant?" Unquote, she asked, referring to Annette and Shannon Harris. Naziah's aunt and grandmother. She pointed out their lack of emotion, the 15-hour delay in calling the police, and concluded Naziah was, quote, forced to live in a home where she was not protected or given adequate attention and love, unquote. On the school, she condemned, quote, the school counselor who never showed up, unquote, when Ziyah was on the floor in crisis that day at school. And then on the community, she called out, quote, all the men who saw Jarvis Butts hanging out and always around these young girls, including Ziyah and his own 9-year-old daughter, going to the shop to clean up, and said nothing. This is the heart of the matter here. A monster like Jarvis Butts does not exist in a vacuum. They thrive. He thrives in the silence of those who are too afraid, too indifferent, or too complicit to speak the fuck up. Speak the fuck up. He counts on people like them to look the other way. That is how he operates. Judge Sabri ended her entire statement like this. She looked Jarvis Butts dead in his eye and said, quote, I wish you a speedy trial and that justice be delivered, unquote. As of today, Jarvis Butts remains incarcerated. His jury trial for the murder of Ziyah Harris is scheduled to begin on February 23rd, 2026. And trust me, this is one that we will be covering. The prosecution plans to call more than 40 witnesses so far. It will be a long road. Ziyah's adult cousin, Roxy, summed up the family's position by saying, I don't have nice words necessarily, but obviously I have to be strong for my family. I have to be strong for Ziyah, and I am putting my trust in the justice system. The case of Ziyah Harris is, I know I say this a lot on this channel, but it is so true, especially when it comes to our children. The case of Ziyah Harris is a profound tragedy. It is, again, another story of a life cut short, of a predator hiding in plain fucking sight, and a safety net so full of holes that a 13-year-old girl has again fallen right through. And the judge's words should be a call to action for all of us, quote, as a community. We should look at this case as a prime example of how much work we have to do when it comes to protecting our children and especially our Black girls, unquote. So, what can we do? Number one, listen to our children, okay? Really listen. Ziyah Harris was on the floor at school. Her cousin saw the abuse happen. Children often tell us the truth in ways that we apparently refuse to fucking hear. Number two, destroy, and I mean destroy, this culture of silence. If you see something, say something. It is always your business when a child's safety is at risk. I don't want to hear none of that, like, ooh, that's none of my business. No, bitch, it's your business. It's your business. Okay. And you know what? After watching the preliminary hearing, like the silence of the men at that auto shop, right? And then the willful, in my opinion, willful blindness of the women in that house, that silence is men like Jarvis Butts. That silence is their greatest fucking accomplice. Number three, demand. demand accountability from everyone, from our schools, from our social services, and yes, from our own families. Ziyah would have turned 15 this year, and she deserved to see that birthday. She deserved to be protected. She deserved to be loved in a real way. In a real way. Her body has still not been found. Jarvis Butts refuses to this day to say where Ziyah Harris's body is. What did he do, not only to her, but with her remains? But her story is crying out for justice. Please, please, let's make sure that we answer. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me again today. As always, I love you so much. I'm sorry that I become so, but I mean, it is Tiff Unraveled. It's pretty, yeah, I named it that for a reason. I have been following this case from the start. I will continue to follow this case to its very end. I promise you. What do you guys think? Talk to me. Where are the failures here? There's way more than one, in my opinion. But as always, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. But please, again, to get Ziyah's story out there for the world to see, give the video a like, and while you're there, hit subscribe. If you're here and you're watching my videos and you like my content, subscribe. I'm with you guys as often as I can, and I really try to bring victims' stories to light and to life. And I know I get a little angry, a little upset, but again, it is called Tiff Unraveled. We're unraveling cases, but I also become slightly unraveled myself. If you like it, I love it. I will see you guys again. Okay, so as soon as I end this, I'm going to start screen recording the preliminary trial of Jarvis Butts. So if you're interested in this story and following it from where it started to where it is now, I will be giving my commentary on the preliminary trial, and you can see a little bit more as far as details that I touched on here, including, I imagine I'm going to get a little angry at the adults in this case. So we're going to do that next. There will be another little spooky October tale coming up super soon as well. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Sunday. I'm not sure. We'll just see how life goes. But other than that, again, thank you guys so much for being here. I adore you. I love you. And I really wouldn't even be here if you guys weren't here with me. So until I see you guys again, please, please stay safe. Keep asking questions and keep unraveling. Love you.